Good evening. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus. My name is Firas Patel. We'd like to thank you, the viewer, for joining us here on Hilaal TV, DSTV channel 347. Now, as we of course approach Ramadan, many NGOs will be conducting work not only here in South Africa but across the globe. And of course, one place that needs major assistance is none other than Gaza. Despite the ceasefire being implemented and still a lot of uncertainties as to whether Israel will maintain its genocidal campaign in that part of Palestine, aid and huge aid when it comes to medical, psychosocial, and so much else is necessary. And one of those organizations is none other than Penny Appeal South Africa. And joining me, I'd like to welcome its CEO, Shahnaaz Paruk. Shahnaaz, assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And as always, jazakallah so much for joining us.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. It's always a pleasure to be speaking with you, Firaz.
Shahnaaz, talk to us about Penny Appeal's work that they've been doing. I mean, yourself, I know Nazir himself has been going through to Gaza a lot of times, challenges you guys faced. But actually, let's go prior to October the 7th. What was the work Penny Appeal was doing in Gaza, given that here's a place that has gone through a lot of destruction prior to October the 7th, but also the fact that this is the largest open-air prison that we have in the world?
Well, prior to the most recent catastrophic events that have transpired, Penny Appeal South Africa was working alongside different partners, different international organizations, specifically focused around providing providing aid such as food security, water, access to medical services, and the like. And I think a very large component of this was based on the actual need on the ground at that point in time. It's a pattern that we have seen in this type of scenario where we have hundreds and thousands of people who simply lack access to their basic human rights, access to food, access to shelter. As in the past, as bombings escalate, we had things that were totally destroyed. We saw things being rebuilt, and now most recently we're seeing them being destroyed again. So our focus has very much always been around provision of food items, water, as well as medical supplies, so that people may have access to these basic human rights.
Shahnaaz, comparing a post-October the 7th to pre-October the 7th, talk to us about how aid was getting in. I ask this because what we have seen occurring is the Israeli occupation forces really making sure that they might make life difficult for aid to get in, especially when it comes to the Rafah border.
100%. I think, prior to 2017, what we saw was very much open trade, trade routes where aid could be sent in with minimal red tape, so to say. There was open dialogue between INGOs or international NGOs who operated and had permissions to operate within the areas, within the territories. So we're talking very much Gaza as well as West Bank. And I think that there was a lot that could be done a lot more freely and a lot more quickly. I think that the key here, or the key thing to note, is that aid seemed to flow a lot better and a lot quicker prior to 2017. When we saw what had transpired in October 2017, what we actually realized was that there was a lot that needed attention in terms of facilitating aid to get through. And so we started paving the way to have partnerships and collaborations with organizations that resided along the borders that had better access to this. What we're now seeing at the Rafah border crossing is, it's been interesting to note that despite everything that's been happening, the trade routes were always open for supplies to get through. Humanitarian aid, however, was slowed down significantly, causing huge blockages. On our previous trip, we did a clip with a truck driver, and he said to us and told us, there's an actual video clip where he tells us how long it takes them to go, what the process is, all of it which is delayed significantly. None of which is straightforward. There's a lot of paperwork that goes through, a lot of permissions that need to be sought, a lot of waiting, and eventually the aid does pass through. However, it's been almost impossible to pinpoint and say it takes a week. There have been instances where trucks have cleared through in 10 days. There's been instances we've had some of our trucks taking at least a month to get through. So very much dependent on what the culture and what the energy is like in those territories at that point in time, and what the occupation is allowing to pass through and what it doesn't. I think that has been really troublesome for us to try and manage and maneuver. But alhamdulillah, I think there has been some activity, so we're thankful for what we have been able to send through.
Shahnaaz, I remember you guys had a pledge that was in December 2023, and we had a very similar conversation. At the time, you said, look, this year, if there's no veto for a ceasefire from a United Nations perspective, what needs to be done is as much aid as possible. The last time I spoke to you, comparing to now, talk to us about the timeline, just how, not just the difficulty of getting aid in, but once that aid was received in Gaza, all those challenges that had arrived when it came to that, and trying to help the people of Gaza at least somehow get themselves back on their feet.
I think first and foremost, what we had to acknowledge is that we could only work around the remit of what was allowed, disallowed items were things that we could not get through. So as much as on the procurement side, it was really intense, and we knew that our focus would be simply on providing basics such as food, medicine, water, clothing where necessary, shelter if we could as well. Of course, all dependent on funding. I think very much, getting the actual aid in, once the procurement element was handled, we then had to worry about the programmatic element, which was ensuring that the goods or the items were distributed to people in Gaza and people in need. And I think this is where the role of so many of those partnerships I spoke of earlier came into play, where we really could not have done any of the work we did, or we could not have reached any of the people that we reached without the presence of these individuals. These were men and women who were based in these same areas where the genocide was basically unfolding, where their families were being attacked, where they had lost homes. We had a colleague who had lost his home. He went out of communication for at least 5 days, and we really were worried because we could not contact him. But when we did, again, the resilience of him understanding the role that he played, and all he said to us was, I don't have a home. I've lost about 15 family members in my entire larger extended family, 3 people from my immediate family, but we're going to make sure that we can still operate, and we'll find a way to do it. And I think this is the highlight of one thing I want to highlight in this, because we tend to think that it's a very straightforward, almost supply logistic function that takes place where everything runs smoothly, but it doesn't. We're literally looking at things on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis in terms of what are we sending in, how is it going to be distributed, where is it going to be distributed, is it safe to distribute in those areas? Again, only with the support and help from our people and our partners there on the ground, who are able to be there in our absence, of course, to be able to facilitate the delivery of aid. And we're told that every single thing is received with immense gratitude and immense thanks. Every single bit makes a difference. There were times where, in terms of procurement, it was difficult for us to source from within the West Bank area food items, and so we sourced flour. And with the flour, there was bread that was baked and distributed, and people were fed. And often we think that it's got to be some kind of again, I'll say the word process to enable aid to get through. Yet we fail to understand it's the smaller things where every little bit that comes together, it's received well, and it's definitely distributed, and all of those people benefit from it.
Shahnaaz, before we go to the break, just the role of NGOs, NPOs in assisting the people of Gaza, and I want to specifically talk of South Africa. What does this speak of the South African spirit? And I know from the political side, South Africa, of course, they have taken Israel to the ICJ, and the solidarity is quite strong with our people here. But just the NGO and NPO part of South Africans, for them to make a difference for the people of Gaza.
Spirit that we've seen, and across different platforms, not just raising funds in terms of humanitarian aid, in terms of people showing compassion, in terms of people advocating. I think it's been a phenomenal response. I can absolutely hand on heart say, and I've said this before, proudly South African, 100% confidently Muslim and proudly South African is how I would summarize myself, because I think our country has really come together, and we're sending out a clear message where most people, in fact everybody, the majority is in agreement on how we feel about this. Even in terms of humanitarian entities, I think there's been a good display of solidarity where entities, NGOs here in South Africa who are raising funds, everybody knows there's a place and there's a role for everybody to play. And I think that it's just really amazing to see people come together, be it the donor market, be it NGOs, to work together for the greater good, because I really do feel that this is one of the largest catastrophic humanitarian crises that we are actually witnessing unfolding. And I think as South Africans, we definitely should be proud that we've taken a stand on the right side of justice. But with that, with that pride, I think there has to be a sense of humility that we display, where we're saying that we understand, as a nation, we do understand the dynamics of an apartheid state. We do understand the dynamics of oppression. And I think the fact that we're actively doing things and being allowed to actively intervene as NGOs in this space, I think that speaks volumes. And it may never be enough, but I do think that it's the effort that counts, and I do think it's the will of people to assist those, people coming together to assist those most in need. I think those are the key lessons to take away from it all.
After the break, I continue my conversation with Shahnaaz Paruk. We're going to be looking ahead to their trip to Gaza. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. We are in conversation with Shahnaaz Paruk from Penny Appeal, South Africa. They, of course, are going to be making the trip to Gaza. And Shahnaaz, it is happening this weekend, if I stand to be corrected?
It's correct,
okay.
Yes, we will be making our way.
Okay, I just wanted to ask from Penny Appeal's perspective, and especially yours, I mean, mentally, how do you prepare yourself, of course, going into a place where even though there's a ceasefire, there is still bodies stuck under the rubble, there is still aid that needs to be given, but most importantly, the people of Gaza are uncertain because you've got elements, if not all, within the Israeli cabinet that wants to continue or reoccur this genocide. So how does Penny Appeal, including yourself, prepare for whatever may come next, but making sure enough aid is being given?
First and foremost, it's always about ensuring that we have a plan. And I think with having that plan in place, one of those things is being able to secure sufficient funding, because relief aid does come at a price. There are many dynamics that we need to overcome. There are many procurement issues and challenges that need to be overcome. Once we've established what the need is, it's as simple as having the procurement sorted and then allowing for that to flow through. With that being said, there's a lot of uncertainty, I would say, in terms of will we be allowed to pass through? Are we going to be able to pass through? Particularly just yesterday, I read an article where there were a few bombs or car bombs or bus bombings that had gone off in Tel Aviv. We're due to land in Tel Aviv, and so we really don't know what is going to be waiting for us on that side. It's very much a matter of inshallah. If we're able to pass, and we pray for that, and we pray that the Almighty guides our teams and helps us make it through so that we're able to meet our teams on the other side. Gaza may not be for us to enter. Our aim is to be able to enter at bare minimum the West Bank area, which we're told is actually extremely very much in need as well. You have a huge influx of individuals moving towards that area, and the need for humanitarian aid is as much as Gaza, bearing in mind that Gaza is actually very much rubble, with not much being operational currently at that point in time. So at very least, we would like for our teams to be able to be in the West Bank area physically, being able to distribute food. Our campaign ahead of Ramadan, besides being a global campaign for other countries, for Palestine itself, which is what we've called it, Love Palestine, is being able to provide food packs, being able to provide hot meals, being able to provide medical items that are needed, being able to provide hygiene packs. These are all things that displaced individuals lack, displaced families need access to hygiene items, to basic food items, to winter items. There's a bitterly cold winter that's currently unfolding, and at least 80% of those individuals that have been displaced are insecure in terms of having sufficient winter items to keep them warm. That literally translates into men, women, and children not only being hungry, but being cold, and being left to battle the elements without sufficient heating or sufficient food. Our aim is to, inshallah, try and address that as much as we can within the means that we have to be able to offer some relief, at least, to those who are most afflicted.
Shahnaaz, Ramadan, of course, starts in just over a week's time, could be a week's time. This is the second Ramadan that the people of Gaza are, of course, going to experience even more destruction, even more trauma, even more pain. What is Penny Appeal's plan in making sure that the people of Gaza feel the spirit of Ramadan despite every single aspect of negativity that can be thrown their way?
I think if it's anything we have learned, we as the world have learned from the people of Gaza, from the Palestinian people, is the spirit of resilience. We have seen those videos of them marching back to their homes, or what once was their homes. We have seen the videos of them insisting that they will never leave and they will never abandon their homes. And I think the spirit we need to embrace is that we will never abandon them, and we will never abandon their call for help. We will always be there to answer the call. We will always be there to answer the call of those most in need, because it is something that our Almighty has decreed for us to do. It is very much an integral part of our faith. And I think with Ramadan being upon us, it's an inherent requirement, not only in Ramadan, but out of Ramadan, to be able to answer the call of those people who are in need, those who are oppressed. So I think the spirit is that of resilience, of us being able to do enough here at home to solicit the funds to be able to provide the humanitarian aid that we provide, to be able to get it through, and for them to be able to receive the aid, to know that they are not forgotten, they will never be forgotten. And I think for them to know that most of the world is on their side, and we will always, always love Palestine, undoubtedly.
Shahnaaz, any other projects that Penny Appeal will be embarking on this coming Ramadan?
Yes. So besides the Palestine trip that we have coming up, we will then be going on to Egypt. We will be packing more humanitarian trucks or humanitarian aid, which will leave through the Rafah border crossing once again to make its way back in to Gaza and to the West Bank. That is going to focus on, again, providing more winter packs, more food or extra large food items, as well as, inshallah, we're hoping to focus on Eid packs. We're also doing campaigns in Yemen as well as Syria. These people are not forgotten to us. Also, we do know that there are humanitarian crises and catastrophes that have unfolded in Syria in the past, in Yemen as well. And so there is a need to provide food security as well as water, as well as iftar meals. And right here at home in South Africa, our teams are already on the ground. We've been hard at work distributing our Ramadan food packs ahead of the month of Ramadan. We'll be doing that across Durban, Johannesburg, Cape Town. We're extending our reach into Malawi and Swaziland this year, and we will be touching on Somalia and Sudan as well, again providing food packs as well as necessary aid. We're hoping to, inshallah, launch our orphan sponsorship program, which will happen with orphans from Syria as well as Palestine. It's already instrumental in South Africa, and we're really hoping to get people on board to be able to support that project.
Shahnaaz Paruk, thank you so much for joining us here on News in Focus on Hilaal TV. Much appreciated. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
That's Shahnaaz Paruk, CEO of Penny Appeal South Africa. After the break, we're going to continue the conversation with regards to Gaza, but we're going to be talking to the journalist and director of a new documentary film which is titled The Phoenix of Gaza. It reflects on life before and after the genocide which took place in the enclave. I'll be speaking to Yusuf Al-Hello, who is coming to us direct from London. Do stay tuned.